Do you mind if I read a book out loud? Okay, thank you. I meant to make it home, but I didn't make it in time, and it's time to read. Thank you. Okay, so this is what's going on. I didn't make it home in time for 6 o'clock, but I made it to a park. So we're gonna read here. So welcome back. Let's see if I can figure out how to make this stay. There we go. Welcome back for today's 20 minutes, 30 minutes of The Alchemist. Oh, Kitagawa sensei. And yeah, we'll see how it goes. I don't have a timer, so feel free to put in a comment if it's like, hey, it's 6:25 or whatever. Okay, so first order of business. Yesterday I was mispronouncing the name of the city in Egypt, the Egyptian city, and the actual pronunciation is Al-Fayoum, not Al-Fayoum, which was what I was saying. It's actually Al-Fayoum. So we'll see if that name comes up again, but I wanted to mention that correction. Okay, we are on page 77. What's happening? I guess they're in the middle of the transit to across the desert with the caravan. Okay. The desert was all sand in some stretches and rocky in others. When the caravan was blocked by a boulder, it had to go around it. If there was a large rocky area, they had to make a major detour. Okay, so they can't walk on rocks. If the sand was too fine for the animals' hooves, they sought a way where the sand was more substantial. In some places, the ground was covered with the salt of dried-up lakes. The animals balked at such places, and the camel drivers were forced to dismount and unburden their charges. The drivers carried the freight themselves over such treacherous footing, and then reloaded the camels. Gosh, I never knew any of that about traveling by camel over sand. If a guide were to fall ill or die, the camel drivers would draw lots and appoint a new one. But all this happened for one basic reason. No matter how many detours and adjustments it made, the caravan moved toward the same point on the compass. Once obstacles were overcome, it returned to its course, sighting on a star that indicated the location of the oasis. When the people saw that star shining in the morning sky, they knew they were on the right course towards water, palm trees, shelter, and other people. It was only the Englishman who was unaware of all this. He, for the most part, was immersed in reading his books. The boy, too, had his book, and he had tried to read it during the first few days of the journey, but he found it much more interesting to observe the caravan and listen to the wind. As soon as, oh hey Ben, we're reading The Alchemist. We're on page 77. Okay. As soon as he had learned to know his camel better and to establish a relationship with him, Santiago threw the book away. Although the boy had developed a superstition that each time he opened the book he would learn something important, he decided it was an unnecessary burden. He became friendly with the camel driver who traveled alongside him. At night, as they sat around the fire, the boy related to the driver his adventures as a shepherd. During one of these conversations, the driver told of his own life. Oh no, more Arabic words. I used to live near El Kairum. Kairum? He said. I had my orchard, my children, and a life that would change not at all until I died. One year, when the crop was the best ever, we all went to Mecca, and I satisfied the only unmet obligation in my life. I could die happily, and it made me feel good. One day, the earth began to tremble, and the Nile overflowed its banks. It was something that I thought could only happen to others, never to me. My neighbors feared they would lose all their olive trees in the flood, and my wife was afraid that we would lose our children. I thought that everything I owned would be destroyed. The land was ruined, and I had to find some other way of earning a living. So, now I'm a camel driver. But that disaster taught me to understand the word of Allah. People need not fear the unknown if they are capable of achieving what they need and want. That's interesting. People need not fear the unknown as long as they're capable of achieving what they need and want. We are afraid of losing what we have, whether it's our life, our possessions, or property. But this fear evaporates when we understand that our life story and the history of the world are written by the same hand. That our life story and the history of the world is written by the same hand. Sometimes their caravan met with another. One always had something the other needed, as if everything was indeed written by one hand. As they sat around the fire, the camel drivers exchanged information about windstorms and told stories about the desert. At other times, mysterious hooded men would appear. They were Bedouins, who did surveillance along the caravan route. They provided warnings about thieves and barbarian tribes. They came in silence and departed the same way, dressed in black garments that showed only their eyes. One night, a camel driver came to the fire where the Englishman and the boy were sitting. "There are rumors of tribal wars," he told them. The three fell silent. The boy noted that there was a sense of fear in the air, even though no one said anything. Once again, he was experiencing the language without words, the universal language. The Englishman asked if they were in danger. "Once you get into the desert, there's no going back," said the camel driver. "And when you can't go back, you have to worry only about the best way of moving forward. The rest is up to Allah, including the danger." And he concluded by saying the mysterious word, "Maktub." It is written. "You should pay more attention to the caravan," said the boy to the Englishman after the camel driver had left. "We make a lot of detours, but we're always heading for the same direction. The same destination." "And you ought to read more about the world," answered the Englishman. "Books are like caravans in that respect." The immense collection of people and animals began to travel faster. The days had always been silent, but now even the nights, when the travelers were accustomed to talking around the fires, had also become quiet. And one day, the leader of the caravan made the decision that the fires should no longer be lighted so as not to attract attention to the caravan. Wow, things are getting bad. The travelers adopted the practice of arranging the animals in a circle at night, sleeping together in the center as protection against the nocturnal cold, and the leader posted armed sentinels at the fringes of the group. The Englishman was unable to sleep one night. He called to the boy, and they took a walk along the dunes surrounding the encampment. There was a full moon, and the boy told the Englishman the story of his life. Ooh. Let's see what it is. Ugh, gotta sit up. Okay. Yeah, whatever. I'll just hold the phone. The Englishman was fascinated with the part about the progress. Oh, I'm so sorry. The boy told the Englishman the story of his life. The Englishman was fascinated with the part about the progress achieved at the crystal shop after the boy began working there. That's the principle that governs all things, he said. In alchemy, it's called the soul of the world. When you want something with all your heart, that's when you're the closest to the soul of the world. It's always a positive force. He also said that this was not just a human gift, that everything on the face of the earth had a soul, whether mineral, vegetable, or animal, or even just a simple thought. Everything on earth is being continuously transformed because the earth is alive and it has a soul. We are part of that soul, so we rarely recognize that it is working for us. But in the crystal shop, you probably realize that even the glasses were collaborating for your success. The boy thought about that for a while as he looked at the moon and the bleached sands. "I've watched the caravan as it crossed the desert," he said. "The caravan and the desert speak the same language, and it's for that reason that the desert allows the crossing. It's going to test the caravans every step to see if it's in time, and if it is, we will make it to the oasis." If either of us had joined this caravan based only on personal courage, but without understanding that language, this journey would have been much more difficult. They stood there looking at the moon. "That's the magic of omens," said the boy. "I've seen how the guides read the signs of the desert, and how the soul of the caravan speaks to the soul of the desert." The Englishman said, "I'd better pay more attention to the caravan." "And I'd better read your books," said the boy. They were strange books. They spoke about Mercury, salt, dragons, and kings, and Santiago didn't understand any of it. But there was one idea that seemed to repeat itself throughout all the books. All things are the manifestation of one thing only. In one of the books, he learned that the most important text in literature of alchemy contained only a few lines and had been inscribed on the surface of an emerald. "It's the emerald tablet," said the Englishman, proud that he might teach something to the boy. "Well, then why do we need all these books?" the boy asked. "So that we can understand those few lines," the Englishman answered, without appearing without appearing to really believe what he had said. "Okay, so that we can understand those few lines," the Englishman answered, without appearing to really believe what he had said. The book that most interested the boy told the stories of the famous alchemists. They were men who had dedicated their entire lives to the purification of metals in their laboratories. They believed that if a metal were heated for many years, it would free itself of all its individual properties, and what was left would be the soul of the world. This soul of the world allowed them to understand anything on the face of the earth, because it was the language with which all things were communicated. They called that discovery the master work. It was part liquid and part solid. "Can't you just observe men and omens in order to understand the language?" the boy asked. "You have a mania for simplifying everything," answered the Englishman, irritated. "Alchemy is a serious discipline. Every step has to be followed exactly as it was followed by the masters." The boy learned that the liquid part of the master work was called the elixir of life, and that it cured all illnesses. It also kept the alchemist from growing old. And the solid part was called the philosopher's stone. "It's not easy to find the philosopher's stone," said the Englishman. "The alchemists spent years in their laboratories observing the fire that purified the metals." It sounds like there's just one alchemist stone, because they're referring to it in singular. Okay. "The alchemists spend years in their laboratories observing the fire that purified the metals. They spent so much time close to the fire," page 84, "that they gave up on the vanities of the world. They discovered that the purification of the metals had led to a purification of themselves." The boy thought about the crystal merchant. He had said that it was a good thing for the boy to clean the crystal pieces so he could free himself from negative thoughts. The boy was becoming more and more convinced that alchemy could be learned in one's daily life. Also, said the Englishman, the Philosopher's Stone has a fascinating property. A small sliver of the stone can transform large quantities of metal into gold. Having heard that, the boy became even more interested in alchemy. He thought that with some patience, he'd be able to transform everything into gold. Not that that would be economically wise. He read the lives of the various people who had succeeded in doing so. Helvetius, Elias, Falcanelli, and Geber. Oh my gosh, these names. I'm so sorry. They were fascinating stories. Each of them had lived out his personal legend to the end. They traveled, spoke with wise men, performed miracles for the incredulous, and owned the Philosopher's Stone and the elixir of life. But when the boy wanted to learn how to achieve the masterwork, he became completely lost. There were just drawings, coded instructions, and obscure texts. Why do they make things so complicated? He asked the Englishman one night. The boy had noticed that the Englishman was irritable and missed his books. So that those who have the responsibility for understanding can understand, he said. Imagine if everyone went around transforming lead into gold. Gold would lose its value. That's what I was talking about. It's only those who are persistent and willing to study things deeply who achieve the masterwork. That's why I'm here in the middle of the desert. I'm seeking a true alchemist who will help me to decipher the codes. When were these books written? The boy asked. Many centuries ago. They didn't have a printing press in those days? Oh wait, they didn't have printing presses in those days, the boy argued. There was no way for everybody to know about alchemy. Why did they use such strange language with so many drawings? The Englishman didn't answer him directly. He said that for the past few days he'd been paying attention to how the caravan operated, but he hadn't learned anything new. The only thing he'd noticed was that the talk of war was becoming more and more frequent. Okay, how are we doing on time? Anyone want to put through what the time is now? Let's see if I can find it out. Okay, it's 6:18 my time, which means we're just short of 20 minutes. Let me see if we want to do one more chunk. Okay, let's do another chunk. One more chunk. Then one day, the boy returned the books to the Englishman. Did you learn anything? The Englishman asked, eager to hear what that might be. He needed someone to talk to, so to avoid thinking about the possibility of war. Well, I learned that the world has a soul, and that whoever understands that soul can also understand the language of things. And I learned that many alchemists realized their personal legends and wound up discovering the soul of the world and the Philosopher's Stone and the elixir of life. I'm sorry, I'm just butchering all of these words. But above all, I learned that these things are all so simple that they could be written on the surface of an emerald. The Englishman was disappointed. The years of research, the magic symbols, the strange words, and the laboratory equipment, none of this had made an impression on the boy. His soul must be too primitive to understand these things, he thought. He took back his books and packed them away again in their bags. Go back to watching your caravan, he said. That didn't teach me anything either. The boy went back to contemplating the silence of the desert and the sand raised by the animals. "Everyone has his own way of learning things, I guess," he said to himself. "His way isn't the same as mine, nor mine his. But we're both in search of our personal legends, and I respect him for that." Should we stop there? I want to do one more chunk. Okay, one more chunk. It's only one page. One turn of the page. The caravan began to travel day and night. The hooded Bedouins reappeared more and more frequently, and the camel driver, who had become a good friend of the boys, explained that the war between the tribes had already begun. The caravan would be very lucky to reach the oasis. The animals were exhausted, and the men talked among themselves less and less. The silence was the worst aspect of the night, when the mere groan of a camel, which before had been nothing but the groan of a camel, now frightened everyone because it might signal a raid. The camel driver, though, seemed not to be very concerned with the threat of war. "I'm alive," he said to the boy as they ate a bunch of dates one night, with no fire and no moon. "When I'm eating, that's all I think about. If I'm on the march, I just concentrate on marching. If I have to fight, it will be just as good a day to die as any other. Because I don't live in either my past or my future, I'm interested only in my present. If you can concentrate always on the present, you'll be a happy man." Sounds very Buddhist. "You'll see that there is life in the desert, that there are stars in the heavens, and that tribesmen fight because they're part of the human race. Life will be a party for you, a grand festival, because life is the moment we're living right now." 2 nights later, as he was getting ready to bed down, the boy looked for the star they followed every night. He thought that the horizon was a bit lower than it had been, because he seemed to see stars on the desert itself. "It's the oasis," said the camel driver. "Well, why don't we go there right now?" the boy asked. "Because we have to sleep." The boy awoke as the sun rose. There in front of him, where the small stars had been the night before, was an endless row of date palms stretching across the entire desert. "We've done it," said the Englishman, who had also awakened early. But the boy was quiet. He was at home with the silence of the desert, and he was content to just look at the trees. He still had a long way to reach the pyramids, and someday this morning would be just a memory. But this was the present moment, the party the camel driver had mentioned, and he wanted to live it as he did the lessons of his past and the dreams of his future. Although the vision of the date palms would someday be just a memory, right now it signified shade, water, and refuge from the war. Yesterday a camel's groan signaled danger, and now a row of date palms could herald a miracle. The world speaks many languages, the boy thought. Okay, we're going to cut it off there. Thanks for joining. That felt like it might have been a little bit longer. Like, I feel like we covered like 3 chunks of story that time. So thanks for following through. I enjoyed it. I hope you guys are having a great day wherever you are, and that you enjoy your present moment. Yeah. And I'm going to go enjoy my present moment. Bye.